Saints fans and who-dats from all over the world. It's time for the Bayou Blitz. With your host, Bob Rose.
Happy Wednesday, New Orleans Saints fans, fans of the Bayou Blitz, and fans of the NFL everywhere. I am Bob Rose. I am one of your co-hosts of the Bayou Blitz, and we thank you for having us into your homes and over your airwaves again on this early April Wednesday evening. Joining me, as always, is my good friend, my partner in crime, and rapidly rising up the draft boards, Mr. Kyle T. Mosley. How are you, Kyle?
You mean falling off the draft? I'm doing well, Bob. How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. We're into April. I don't know about down there, but the flowers will be starting to bloom up here soon. It's spring track season for those fans of the sport, and as we all know, we are inching closer and closer to the NFL's version of Christmas, the NFL Draft.
Yeah. It's very, very good signs ahead for the Saints. I feel good about what we have accomplished thus far in free agency, and I'm looking forward to see how we're going to make some moves in the NFL Draft coming up.
I couldn't have said it better myself. I don't think there were a lot of us that pictured the New Orleans Saints being as active in free agency is what they turned out to be. They really identified areas of need and went for specific players, as they have done such a great job of doing in the last couple of years, in kind of rebounding from those 3 straight 7 and 9 seasons. But the player movement was a lot more than what many of us expected. As far as, and we've talked about it, the last couple of weeks on the show here. Never doubt Mr. Mickey Loomis when it comes to the almighty dollar. I've said it before. I don't know how he figures it out, but that's above my pay grade. I don't need to know how he figures it out. I just know he's going to get the job done year after year, and bring in new talent. Now, obviously, they had a couple years there where the moves that they made didn't pay off, but you still can't deny that he, Sean Payton, and that Saints front office will do what they feel they need to do and what they feel is necessary to make this team better. And I'm like you. I like the moves that they made so far.
Yeah, I think what we really need to be able to pay attention to is a lot of attention people have on the draft. Who can we get? Who's going to be the next stars of the team? Who could possibly come in and make an immediate impact? But what the value for the New Orleans Saints has been for such a long, long time is to find those guys who are the undrafted free agents. The guys like the Pierre Thomases of the group. Those guys who are out there who are unsung heroes who could make it to Saints Hall of Fame or the Hall of Fame. So that's what I'm interested to see. You have guys like Keith Kirkwood, from last season, late in the season, started to make an impact for the Saints. Who will the next Keith Kirkwood be? Who will the next Pierre Thomas or Chris Ivory or whomever come in and really fill in some holes for the Saints, but also be that next star in the eyes of the Who Dat Nation who really loves to embrace the underdog.
Yeah, exactly. And I know you feel it too. I get frustrated. I have been frustrated with a certain faction of our team's fan base this offseason because coming in, they were almost considering the offseason a wash. The Saints don't have any money to spend in free agency. Well, we've covered that in recent weeks. The Saints don't have a first-round draft choice, or they only have one pick in the first 4 rounds. That is, of course, a late second-round selection. But you just ran down a couple of names. And, we could throw a few more on there. Zach Strief, a 7th-round draft choice. Marcus Colston, a 7th-round draft choice. Even looking at this current Saints roster, Alvin Kamara and Alex Anzalone were 3rd-round draft choices. Demario Davis wasn't drafted by the team, by the Saints, but when he came into the league, I believe with the Jets, he was a late-round draft choice. Even Michael Thomas and Von Bell and Marcus Williams, they were not first-round draft choices. They were all drafted in the 2nd round. And I like that this draft looks deep at certain positions where the Saints could frankly use to stand to bolster their depth and maybe upgrade their current talent pool a little bit. And we know that the Saints have 6 draft choices in the draft: a 2nd, 2 5ths, 2 6ths, and a 7th. I would be shocked if they didn't move those pieces around. Now, I don't think that they'll get back in the 1st round personally, but I do expect that they'll move around and position themselves to draft players that they believe, like you said, will help their team not only immediately but down the road. Because this team is not only set up to win now. The goal with this front office and this coaching staff is to set up a long-term blueprint for success, and you can only do that with smart drafting.
Smart drafting, as well as finding some kids out of there who have some heart, who are passionate about making a team as well, right? Mm-hmm. You're not going to get all blue chip guys every time who are going to be impact players. You have that 2% that are out there that are going to be the immediate superstars. You have the rest, let's say a good 10% that's going to be the team players, and then you have the supporting cast. And a lot of times people kind of overlook the fact if you have a very good supporting cast, you can be able to develop a great team. And I think right now the Saints have positioned themselves thus far. If you look at what ESPN has ranked the Saints after their free agent signing, they have catapulted the Saints to number 1 in the power rankings. Now, that doesn't mean a whole lot, just as well as I do, Bob. Those rankings are going to fluctuate throughout the rest of this season, right? But what it told me is that some of the guys who are analysts and pundits really thought a lot about some of the key signings of the New Orleans Saints, even though we lost a Mark Ingram, to be able to have Murray to come in, even though it looked like Ben Watson's retirement, who was going to be that next tight end. Here comes Cook. So, and to be able to get Malcolm Brown, to be able to get the gentleman from the Giants, who played defensive end, and the Raiders. I mean, it's really good signings here and there for the team. Now, what are we going to do about adding some depth on the offensive line? What are we going to do about helping out, possibly bringing in – do we bring in a defensive tackle and kind of groom a guy from infancy and have them to be able to have some depth for us, like a Ed Oliver? So do the Saints position themselves some way within the draft to move up to be able to grab a guy like that in the 1st round? So those are some of the key elements that are still in play for the New Orleans Saints at this time. And I think fans have to realize that everything is still a work in progress for this team. Mm-hmm. And coming into the draft is going to be no different than how we have seen Mickey Loomis, Sean Payton, and as well as that scouting staff operate year in and year out.
Yeah, exactly. And, they know, of course, they're shooting for a championship. But the first goal that they need to do is hold serve in the NFC South. The Saints have won the division 2 consecutive years. is something that doesn't happen often since the advent of the division in the early 2000s. In fact, I think other than the Saints, the only other repeat division champion has been the Carolina Panthers. But we know that the NFC South is normally one of the hottest contested divisions in the NFL. And this month, as we get ready for the draft, we're going to kind of take a look throughout the division. And, you know, I know he's going to be joining us in a little bit, but we're really excited to get a view from the Carolina Panthers point of view. You know, our friend Tony Dunn from the C3 Panthers podcast on Tuesday night will be joining us, checking in with us in a little bit. You know, not only for a steel cage match between Kyle and myself, but kind of give us his view on what our friends, the Carolina Panthers, have done this offseason and how they're preparing for the draft. It's always kind of a fun viewpoint. And, you know, we joke about steel cage match and rivalries and everything like that, but Tony is a great guy. I've been on his show a few times. For some reason, he keeps asking me back, so maybe question his judgment a little bit, but I'm looking forward to getting his viewpoint when he comes and joins us in a little bit.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what these guys think about how Riverboat Ron is going to operate the Carolina Panthers this season, how Cam Newton's going to rebound if he can, how they're going to replace some of those key pieces on defense that have been jettisoned off the team, you know, this season. So, and I think he is in the queue with us at this time, Bob.
Tony, you with us?
Yes, sir. Just joined.
Hey, Tony.
We appreciate you jumping on, my friend.
No problem, man. I'm glad to be here.
All right, good. Hey, Tony, this is Kyle. I'm here with Bob.
Right on. My name's Tony Dunn. I'm with the C3 Panthers podcast, man. Thanks a ton for having me come on, even though I kind of don't like your team.
We take that with pride. Thank you very much.
No problem.
And Tony, I don't know if you caught what we what we said to kind of introduce you. But I've mentioned to our audience that I've been on your show a few times. I love your show. I don't like your team either, but I love your show. Tell our viewers how they can find your show and podcasts.
Yeah, man. You can follow us on Twitter at @cat_chronicles. The name of the podcast is the C3 Panthers podcast. You can find it on YouTube. Just type in Carolina Panthers podcast. We're the longest running Carolina Panthers podcast, where we're just a bunch of fools that get on every Tuesday night at 9 p.m. And just, we take it serious. We have fun, just like you guys do. We take the conversation serious, but not ourselves serious. So, we're just fans having a good time, and we appreciate. I thank you for having me on. You're always gracious when you come on. You deal with us. And you know what is the good news is that we all hate the Falcons even more.
Yeah, definitely. You're my man now, Tony. I love you, dude.
Hey, Tony, the first thing I want to get to about you guys, now you kind of dropped off after a pretty good sustained run. Your team fell back to 7-9, a glorious start. You ran out of the gates at 6-2, and then had some injury concerns down the course of the season. And frankly, at least I thought the team looked old a little bit, in addition to the injury concerns. And when you look at the losses that the Panthers have suffered, there were a couple names that really your franchise has been built around, a couple franchise icons, and Julius Peppers and Thomas Davis is no longer going to be in a Panther uniform. The team moved on from Matt Khalil, Captain Munnerlyn, and Devin Funchess. Out of those players, who do you think is going to be the biggest loss on the field?
Oh, I mean, on the field is I would say Thomas Davis, just because he's still good. I mean, and sadly is that to see a player, we just expected him to be older, quicker. And he's just continued to play football so well that we've had a first-round draft pick in Shaq Thompson sitting essentially just playing 30% of the snaps because it's hard to take a guy like Thomas Davis, who means so much to the franchise, and is still playing at a high level. So I think Thomas Davis, but look, all those names that you said is that first is Julius Peppers was drafted when I was coming out of high school almost. And that was it's amazing that he's still in the league, and it's sad that he was so important to our organization this late. We're glad, he's my favorite Panther of all time. But like you said, we got old a little quicker than expected last year. We thought we were going to be able to squeeze it out, but there were some problems, and it really all just came down to Cam's shoulder anyway. At the end of the day, is that the defense was old and slow, and usually the defense is carrying us, and then it's just Cam alone. But we finally were starting to get some offensive juice, flowing with North Turner, and Cam was playing so great, and then his just arm fell off, and that's really the story. But like you said, got old quick. But the good news is for us is that we're also getting young very quick. So we're sad to see Thomas Davis go, but it's just sometimes it's just kind of time for changing the guard. And it's really nice to see Julius Peppers come back to the organization. A lot of Panther fans were upset with him the way he left. And that, I think, is bullcrap on their part. But, is at the end of the day, it's kind of a happy story for everybody. And now it's just all Ron Rivera is on the hot seat, and it's time to get it done.
Yeah, that's my question to you guys. What's going to happen this season if the Panthers do not have a winning season? Do you believe this is it for Ron Rivera altogether? Do you also think they may make some changes with the quarterback slot if these guys do not win as well and Cam has a mediocre season?
Well, here is the easy answer to this is yes. Is Ron Rivera and Marty Herney, they are fighting for their jobs, and that's kind of the way of the NFL at this point, is that you've done some good things for the organization, got us to a Super Bowl. You've been Coach of the Year once or I think maybe even twice. But, is that we have a short memory when it comes to what you can do for us, and we have a new owner now. That's the big story here. So we come in, you get a new owner in David Tepper, and he's kind of inherited Ron Rivera, Marty Herney, and these is both guys that are kind of very closely tied to the Jerry Richardson era. So, David Tepper has been actually very cool with them, and I think acknowledged how much the talent they give. I think he's been very measured and not making a knee-jerk reaction even after this past season. But yeah, the coaching staff, if they don't, I'm telling you this, if they don't get the 10 wins this year, I wouldn't be surprised if it's just like, hey, thank you for what you've done for the organization, but it's just time for a new kind of page. So I would argue that, look, is that unless you're one of these head coaches that has just earned your stripes at so much, and Rivera's close to kind of being there. He needs something more. He probably needs another NFC championship. I mean, obviously a Super Bowl would do that for you, but he hasn't, gotten his place in the pantheon of coaches where he's untouchable. But we saw how many coaches, the carousel, and how deep into the well people have been digging. So we're fine with it for this year. Now, and then Marty Herney, he's good in his own right. But, if you're going to make a change, you make a whole change. Now, just the last point to your question was about Cam. If Cam has a mediocre season this year, he has a mediocre season this year. And then we should still pay him everything in the world. And instead, Cam Newton's Cam Newton. Is that I'd rather have him than not.
Do you? Is his health coming along? I mean, is he where he feels pretty comfortable and where the organization feels pretty comfortable in his bounce back to health? Because Lord knows we've seen him take some vicious punishment over the years, And I remember being on your show last year and kind of wondering out loud about, hey, when are these hits really going to start to take his toll? And, he's not going to bounce back. Is that a legitimate concern yet, or is he coming along pretty well?
Well, is it's a shoulder injury in his throwing shoulder. It didn't heal. It's something that's gone back 2 seasons ago, so he played. He's already recovered from the first surgery and then played a full season and then half season. So 2017 and then 2018, like 10 games in 2018. And I guess they're hoping that this second surgery cleans things up. But I have a hard time believing that whatever is wrong with Cam Newton's arm is a permanent problem. Now, it might shorten the length of his overall career. He might run into some things later on, like arthritis and some stuff. But it sounds like they've cleaned it all up. And, the key now is just how do you just bring them back the right way? I don't think this is in the severity of what like an Andrew Luck was. I think that people who kind of throw that headline out like is Cam can miss a whole season, I think that's just kind of easily, it's just an easy association that gets some attention. So I'm not overly worried about it, and I think unless the Panthers like draft a quarterback in the first round, which I don't see happening, I don't suspect that the Panthers are overly worried about it. But is that we just always, it doesn't matter how good our defense is, how good anybody is on our team, we live and die by Cam Newton. So ask me that again in August. We'll say August. We'll push it all the way to week 1.
Interesting. Well, what are some of the holes that the Panthers are targeting to fill if they haven't already done it in free agency and looking toward the draft coming up?
Oh, man, we've really had a kick-ass free agency. I'll tell you this, is that Panthers come in and maybe I think we had like 20 million or 24 million in cap space, which is nothing in the NFL, really. Everybody's always saying we can't do anything, and we had so many holes to fill. I mean, you're talking about losing Ryan Khalil at center, where at least every Panther fan wants to say Hall of Famer. But at the end of the day, he's just a legend for us. Mm-hmm. And you've lost like all of these defensive ends and things like this, and like you said, Thomas Davis moving on, and some questions in the secondary. So there are tons and tons of holes for the Panthers, but they had a fantastic offseason. They signed Eric Reed early before safety started getting stupid money. You know what I'm saying? Like, you look at what Landon Collins got in Washington, and God bless, I'm not trying to ever criticize somebody for getting paid, but man, they paid him. That's for sure. Yeah. So, I think Eric Reed before free agency opens, that's is a good start. Then we grab Matt Paradis, and I was thinking about this when I was kind of just thinking about what the Saints have done in the past in free agency. And you guys remember when you guys traded for, obviously you remember, but Unger, you traded for Unger. Mm-hmm. And at the time, it's like, oh, this is kind of an okay deal. It didn't seem like a great or bad. Like, it just seemed very even at the time, right? And then he had a great, kind of 2-year stretch with the Saints, and really was a huge contributor. I think really kind of turned around your offensive line woes. And I'm not saying him alone, but there was just something about having that center there that seemed to provide some stability. And there was a lot of concern with that for the Panthers. So I think getting Matt Paradis is giant right there. So I think those two things alone, and then kind of a surprise where, basically our offensive line is just this huge concern. We get Darryl Williams. And, he's listed at least on all the lists, free agency, like he's going to make some cash. But he's had some injury problems with the Panthers. He's had some pretty good seasons, one good season with the Panthers. But you got him for a 1-year deal, so you get a guy you think is going to be your starter and continue to bolster the offensive line. And then at the last moment, you get Bruce Irvin. And I know that's not a huge thing, but we didn't get him for a lot of money. and he wasn't bad in Atlanta. And maybe the Panthers are saying they're going to a 3-4 defense a little bit more, that type of look. So we did what we needed to do so we can go into the draft and say, hey, we just need tackle, edge. That's it. It's just give us offensive linemen, defensive linemen, and I'd be happy if we drafted just 6 of 3 and 3.
And I'll tell you what, you mentioned Paradis, and I love that signing by you guys. He is a terrific interior lineman, and he was kind of on my free agents to watch list as the Saints came into free agency, because we were all aware of Unger's age and salary combination. And while it surprised a lot of us that he retired, kind of abruptly, I was kind of thinking that the Saints might go the direction of an interior offensive lineman too. Now they picked up Nick Easton, who I think is going to be okay, but I think you guys struck gold when you got Paradis away from Denver. And I agree with you. I think your signing of Urban is very underrated. He's not an every down guy, but he still brings that pressure from the edge. And I don't have to tell you what kind of push you guys get from your defensive tackles. So that's going to probably lessen the double teaming that Irvin will get on the edge because of how much attention needs to be paid to your tackles, which are probably the strongest position on your team. You guys might not have signed a big long list of names, but you, similar to New Orleans, you identified where your biggest needs were, and you didn't spend a whole lot of money in doing it. So, I completely agree that you guys really bagged in re-signing Reed and doing it so early without having to pay him a ton of money. I mean, he solidified that secondary on the back end wonderfully once he got more comfortable in your system. How do you feel about your cornerbacks, though, heading into the season or heading into the draft so far?
Well, I think for everybody, maybe you guys know this more than anybody, is it doesn't matter who's starting. It's about who's finishing and, what's the depth look like. And so we got James Bradbury, who is a guy that's going to be going out, I believe, into a contract year. He doesn't get a lot of picks, but, man, he's a big body guy. He seems like he can hang with the ones. He's been playing better each year. I think he's going into his 4th year. Maybe they got him on his 5th year option. I'm not entirely sure about that. And then you got an exciting rookie, who early on in the season we thought was going to potentially be a Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate, and Dante Jackson. He's just flamboyant. He's fast. He can do whatever you want. But I guess then here's the thing: is what happens after that. And so I guess what we're banking on is probably what a lot of teams in the NFL are banking on is how the guys we're starting are going to work. And we better try to find some guys that can step in a little bit if they don't. And I saw you guys didn't you guys get P.J. Williams back for another year?
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can have him.
Well, sometimes, I don't know what, and I don't know about him specifically, but to me, that's what this kind of goes to is, boy, the guys you're putting out there, they better work right because there is a drop-off after them. So, maybe something to watch with the Panthers that we're not really thinking about as much as we probably should be is, maybe the Panthers stun and do something like a corner in the second. But then, the question is, I guess that's going to tell you what they think about James Bradbury. It's so hard to kind of calculate, isn't it? Is that when you put the starters out there, but what happens if any of it doesn't work? And what are you talking about 2 or 3 years down the road? So I think that, like you said, defensive tackles, Luke Kuechly, that's our bread and butter right there. Eric Reed kind of gives us more strength up the center in the backfield. So, looks at the Panthers try to, Bruce Irvin's a little bit of help there, but, if they can add some juice on the outside, I think that would make Poe, who Panther fans have hated, and KK Short, who is awesome, but he can't essentially just be as awesome as he is if you put him out there by himself. And what we saw was that the Panthers defensive tackles just didn't produce as much last year. And we don't know if it was because of their play, but or maybe because the ends aren't doing enough or are, maybe not being as productive as they could be, which then opens up things at the center. So who knows, right? It's all got to click together. And that's what we're all trying to figure out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, jumping to the offensive side of the ball, you guys nabbed DJ Moore in the first round last year. I loved that pick at the time, and he did flash some really nice potential during the year. Do you expect a big jump out of him in year two? And, while we're talking about pass catchers, we'd love to know what's going on with Greg Olsen and whether Ian Thomas, another rookie tight end last year, is ready to step up if Olsen doesn't return.
All fantastic questions, I tell you that. And the hardest one to answer is going to be the tight end stuff. Again, just so fragile. DJ Moore is awesome. And all the Twitter, draft Twitter, you guys probably got them. I mean, everybody's got them for their own team. And that is that nobody on their own team is good. And everybody else on every other team is awesome for some reason. So, like, the Panthers draft Twitter will somehow tell you that DJ Moore is pretty good, but he's not fantastic like all these other guys you could have had in the third round of last year. DJ Moore is awesome, dude. Like, he's just, the more you get him the ball, the more he's just going to keep doing. He's like Steve Smith with more meat on his bones already. He just makes play. I mean, he does everything. And so if you can make him like one of those guys who just feels it, like kind of like a guy that you, I guess, expect to be with Brady in 3 or 4 years or something like that, is where their game is just so cerebral at a point where they're just playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. DJ Moore can be that, but they're going to be like, well, he's not tall enough, he's not this, and then some asshole's going to say he doesn't run routes well enough. I don't know what that means, because he sure looks like he's killing it. So I'm not worried about him. I think the question is this, is can you have two receivers who are 6'1" and under get it done by themselves? And right now we got another guy in Curtis Samuel who could be crazy, like a Brandon Cooks type player, maybe even better, or at least that's what we want to think. So the question is, can you really do it, or do you need a guy that's more Michael Thomas, just got more length? So we'll see. And I think that's where we're at, and will be interesting to see. The Panthers didn't do anything in free agency there. Devin Funchess walks, which, I don't think is a referendum on anything. Sometimes it's just best for people to go their separate ways. And but they didn't go and do anything else. So, I mean, they got to have some faith there. Unless you go see them go and get some big, tall guy in the second or third, I guess that may make a statement. Greg Olsen is older. I mean, he's 2 years older than the guy that you guys just paid, Jared Cook.
Yeah.
And he's got this little bone in his foot and he describes it, he's like so pissed that this one little bone causing him so many problems. And, I always joke on the podcast, like, if you're eating a chicken wing, this is like the gristle on the chicken wing. It's so little, you probably eat it. And this little bone is causing this guy who's a really consistent player to potentially have to end his career. We'll see. He's rehabbing. Nobody knows. That's a harder question, I think, than Cam in some ways. And Ian Thomas has looked great. But then who else you got? You better. I mean, he can't just put him in and it be him alone. So that's our offense right there. And by the way, we got Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, and they're pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you guys, I find it interesting because you guys are in a very similar position at the receiver spots and at the tight end that the Saints kind of find themselves in. Now, you mentioned the Saints brought in Cook. I think a lot of us still expect them to address the tight end, maybe not with their second-round pick now, but somewhere in what is considered to be a deep tight end draft. And we're sort of on the flip side of you guys as a receiver. We have our big guys. We need a guy to take a play over the top, or to at least help Tre'Quan Smith and whatever Ted Ginn has left in the tank to do that. But it looks like a deep receiving core draft as well. I'm noticing some big bodies early on, and then some playmakers deeper on. So yeah, I'm with you. You know, if I'm looking at the Panthers war room, it wouldn't surprise me if I don't know how many picks you guys have in total, but it wouldn't surprise me if they brought in another face or two at both positions, for that offense, and give Cam a couple more weapons, because most of his career, it's just been him and little else.
Yeah, I mean, the general manager, Marty Herney, said, and this was like maybe a week ago, and it was after the Bruce Irvin signing, he said that like we're about 40 or 50% of the way through the free agency process. And we were like, oh, like, what does that, mean? I mean, Jesus, the damn draft is almost here. Like, how much more free agency really is there to go, buddy? But, I mean, I think I understand what he's saying is that there's a lot of these kind of extraneous pieces that are also kind of fluid. And I think we're going to just learn really a lot about our teams in the draft. And what I mean by that is, like, what did they feel like? I would actually say this, is that if you want to know how your team did in the draft or what they were thinking in the draft, is look at the small 2 or 3 roster moves they make after they draft some players. Mm-hmm. And that is, do the Panthers, do they get a guy in the 3rd round or the 4th round that's kind of a bigger body receiver that they think that are going to try to move in and do something, and then they release maybe Torrey Smith and try to clear up $5 million, who's not even a big guy, or, or Jarris Wright, or do those guys stick around and you try to not add more youth to the group because you already got 2 young guys in Curtis Samuel and DJ Moore? So it's kind of like this, is like, you want to know what they were thinking in the draft. You think about those 2 or 3, who's cut after the draft and who's added after the draft. And they might not be big names or anything like that, but maybe it kind of tells you, we're trying to go into training camp with 6 receivers or 7. If a team goes into training camp and they got 7 receivers on the roster, they're trying to learn about the receiver group, or 8 or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're going to cut it down to 5 or 6. At least a team like our team usually does. We never bring in more than 6. So, like, if you got a bunch of people in that group, I would think you're trying to learn about them. So I guess that's how you try to engage that up.
I'll put Kyle.
Yeah, guys, I'm here.
Sorry, I was hoping we didn't put you to sleep.
No. I was just listening. Look. Thinking about everything that you guys have been through, new ownership now, and possibly it's a season that could be make it or break it for quite a few guys who been in the Carolina Panthers lore, like Cam Newton. I know you have a great young star at Christian McCaffrey there. I just want to know, from a pessimistic point of view, do you guys see any limitations from what you have in the current, the current team makeup, where you guys cannot compete or can compete for the NFC crown? NFC South crown.
Well, you may put on the pessimistic hat, then hell yeah, we could say, like, there's our starting quarterback and his arm didn't work for the last 6 weeks, and he had this surgery, and he broke up with his girlfriend on Instagram now. And
What? Are you serious?
I didn't hear that one.
I didn't hear about that either.
He's not having sex for a whole month at times. Who knows? I guess again, I said, hey, check with me in September, maybe even October, and we'll figure out what's up with Cam. And like this, Cam could come out and be just dealing, or, I mean, if he's not dealing, then we're in trouble. So that's my first one, is that, yeah, that's a giant question. Cam Newton's shoulder always, or just Cam Newton, period. I mean, it would be like this, is imagine if Drew Brees didn't play the last 6 games of the last season and had a surgery. I mean, I don't care who you got on your team. You know, I mean, that's it. And unless you have somebody behind him you think can, you know, maybe win with a defensive team or something. So that's number one. Number two is that we don't really have anybody on the edge. We don't know anything about our defensive pass. Everything in the NFL, it just seems like this: if your defensive front eats, then you're gonna be you're gonna be living good.
Yeah.
So that again, question mark. And yeah, I mean that's it. And our offensive line always sucks. Always sucks. Always sucks. And maybe is the reason why Cam Newton his arm is falling off. Is maybe it's not just all Cam Newton. So yeah, those 3 things could derail our season. And then the other hope we just have is that, like, man, whoever you think is going to be good in the NFL at this point in the season is probably going to be trash.
Okay. Tony, I need an honest answer from you on this one, man. When you saw Drew Brees throwing that ball to Tommy Lee and him getting blasted, what was the first thing that went through your mind?
Are you talking about the non
interference call? The no call.
All right. 2 things went through my mind. Is number one that went through my mind is that obviously it was pass interference and it sucked. I wish that they would have called it, and I wish you guys would have lost some other way. And I think I said this with Bob on our podcast before, is that I want you to lose. Oh God, I mean, do I want the Saints to win? No. But it's a lot easier to gloat when it's of your own fault.
Yeah.
Like if you're a team that blows 25-point lead in the Super Bowl. You know what I'm saying? We can gloat about that because, like, it wasn't robbed. So is that, yes, it was a pass interference. It's ridiculous. I mean, everybody saw it. And I wouldn't even say this. I kept saying this, is who cares if it's pass interference or whatever. It's a helmet-to-helmet targeted, like whatever.
Exactly.
If there's, I mean, that's the thing is I don't even care if the guy had the ball, didn't have the ball. That's the thing is imagine if the dude caught the ball, it still should be a penalty.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the missing element that's been kind of overshadowed by the pass interference. The helmet to helmet was more glaring than anything else that the officials just overlooked.
Yeah, I agree. And the second thing that went through my mind, and maybe I might be confusing it, was it the Atlanta game? Do you guys got a guy named Kazi on your team, or is that Atlanta?
No, must be Atlanta.
That's Atlanta. Okay, because there's this kid on Atlanta that helmeted Cam. So like, I'm like, what? You know, so those are probably the thoughts that were running through my head. But no, you guys got screwed on that, and I'm not going to gloat about that. Is I would have rather, you know, I mean, God, and you want to talk about this? Is I know that you guys probably believe it's like a conspiracy or some crap. And that's why they did it.
It is.
But I think
what you mean? It's not.
But wouldn't the Brees Brady Bowl be the grandest narrative that NFL could kind of have at the moment? I didn't like this. I just never buy this idea like that LA market is so big that like they don't watch the Super Bowl or something if they're not in it.
Yeah.
And like, what have they been doing for the last 20 years? Have they not watched it?
Right.
I would just say I thought the Brees Brady narrative would be cool. I was really hoping for pulling for the Rivers Brees Bowl, like Super Bowl. That would have been to me cool.
Yeah.
And I hate Phillip Rivers.
Yeah.
But I would have had to cheer for him.
Wow. You know, and you said something about the LA side, and remember Roger Goodell for many a year that market, wanted the LA market, and he pushed and pushed and pushed for it. And you saw pretty decent attendance, but still, there wasn't a true following of fans at that Super Bowl, you know. But if the New Orleans Saints would have had fans there, even if Carolina Panthers had fans there, you know, you would have more contingency than what we saw in the LA Rams. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, those LA fans are fickle, man.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Is that they live in probably too nice of an area to really care about sports. I think about this like San Diego, or at least people continue to tell me like it's like San Diego is like paradise on earth or whatever.
It's very nice.
But like, if it's that nice, I mean, maybe you're not like us who are just like grinding through our regular lives in regular places, just and then trying to find solace in our football teams. Maybe you're enjoying your own life at that point, I guess. So I don't know, but the LA fans are fickle, and I mean, just look at the basketball stuff. Is like it's less about being a fan, and I think more about status-ship.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah. And I want to tell our listeners too that for the last 2 years, this year, listeners, Tony reached out to me, as did a number of listeners to his show. They reached out to me in each of the last 2 years after the Vikings playoff loss, and then again after this Rams one. Reached out to me personally and said, "Hey man, you all right?" And that we joke about it, and we joke about going the back and forth, but that meant a lot to me. And Tony, if I'm not mistaken, I was on your show just a couple of days right after the Rams loss. So I was, I was still smarting. I was still smarting, and I gave you the chance. I thought I controlled my language, but I gave you the chance. I said, "You sure you want to do that?"
Yeah, I don't mind, man. I think of this is that, and maybe, I go back to the question you asked me is like, what do you think about it? That point is we had a lot of Panther fans that were sending tweets out, and I get it. Like, I mean, we're young. A lot of people are young, and there's, it's good. It's an easy chance, low hanging fruit to go after somebody. But man, these opportunities are so far few.
Right.
That's the real thing. Is that look at what the Browns are going through. Like a fan of something like that, and just for so long. So yeah, that one play could mean like a whole lifetime of football watching for somebody. So, gosh, yeah, I mean, it sucks, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Hey, listen, first I want to apologize. It's been long overdue to get you on our show, but I'm really, really glad you took some time out to do it tonight. And I definitely want to have you back in the off season after we get the draft over with, and as we're getting ready to pack our bags for training camp. But tell our viewers again, our listeners again, how to find you guys and your outstanding show.
Yeah, you can follow it. Look, we're on YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, wherever, and trying to beg for your eyeballs and your ears, I guess. The name of it is the C3 Panthers podcast. We just cut up some Panthers football from the fan perspective each and every week. We're on Twitter at @cat_chronicles. That's @cat_chronicles. And, you can check out the podcast on like iTunes, wherever, Stitcher, wherever you get it. And right now we got this little puppy at my house, and he's been on the longest walk of his life right now through this podcast.
I'm sorry.
No, in a good way. But I'm like, gosh, are these people listening to me? I'm just like huffing and puffing on the other side.
Well, that's okay. Well, bring little guy in.
All right, man. Well, thanks for having me on, guys.
Well, Tony, thank you for being with us. Take care, man.
All right, Bob. We'll catch up with you soon. Hope. Draft
sure.
night. Yeah, come by draft night. Look, we have a live draft party every year where we just drink beer and watch the draft the whole time, and we cycle in people. So Bob, let's get you on right after or before the Saints pick. Not like right at whenever. When it's just we watch the whole first round, and I'd like to see what you think of your first round pick and how things are unfolding.
You got it. I'll consider it an invite. I jumped on with you guys a little bit last year and had a lot of fun. Always have a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. So consider it done.
All right, man. All right, thanks, guys. You guys have a good one.
All right.
Oh, and the Falcons suck, and you guys suck, too.
All right. Take care.
Bye. Tony's a lot of fun, guys. I know probably 95 to 99% of our listeners right now are obviously New Orleans Saints fans. But if you've never checked out his show, give it a listen, give it a view. They really are a lot of fun. I've had fun when I've been on with them. I mean, of course we're rivals. Of course we root for each other's teams to lose, except when we're playing Atlanta. But they really put on a good product. So yeah, if you've never checked them out, check them out. You won't regret doing it.
Yep, definitely. All right, Bob. So, any special things we need to talk about before wrapping up the show?
Oh gosh, and again, we want to thank Tony Dunn from the C3 Panthers podcast for joining us. Looking forward to getting him on again a couple times in the off season as well. He's had some really interesting things about where he thinks the Panthers are going to go. Frankly, I was hoping that they would take a nosedive to the bottom of the division and give us one less competitor. But he outlined some things that make me think that this team is still going to be a formidable division foe this year. Like Kyle and I talked about earlier in the show, we're going to try to get our friends from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Locked On Bucs podcast, Mr. Harrison and Mr. Yarko, back on with us too this month. Probably, in addition to the draft, of course, probably the most exciting news we have is that Kyle and I have been in talks back and forth with the icon, the incomparable Mr. Mike Detillier, and we do plan on having him sometime, hopefully next week or the week after. But we want to get his viewpoints on the draft in general and specifically where he thinks our New Orleans Saints are going to go. His draft guide is out and published and actually being mailed out for those, for those that subscribe to it. Kyle and I are anxiously awaiting our edition. So we'll keep you guys posted through our Facebook group and through our Twitter feeds about what guests we're going to have on what week as we lead up to this draft. But I mean, it's an exciting month, like you kind of outlined early on, right off the bat, Kyle. Just because this team does not have a first-round pick does not mean that they're not going to bring in some really good and really exciting players. And I also, even though I don't necessarily see it happening, I wouldn't suggest Saints fans just blow off Thursday night thinking, oh, the Saints aren't going to have a first-round draft choice. I don't care what's going on. Watch, folks. We have division rivals that are going to pick, and Mickey Loomis, Jeff Ireland, Sean Payton are always full of surprises, so they might still sneak in there at the tail end, is somewhere between picks 25 and 32 to grab us a player too.
Yeah, you never know. You never know when old Bill decides to move out of the first round and pick up some more extra picks. I think he has like 84 picks this round. I mean, Belichick always has a really gluttony. It's just vile what he does with all the picks that he's able to pick up, man. But that's just smart business and smart way of handling everything there. Look, we've got to say this. A couple of LSU boys are now teammates again, Jarvis Landry as well as Odell Beckham Jr.
That's right.
Are with the Browns with Mr. Mayfield guiding them and, first-year coach Kitchens. And looks like the Browns have a pretty decent team that they're going to fill, but you still have to play the game. So I do have a question for you, Bob. Based upon what you see with some of the moves within the NFC, now let's just stick there because that's the conference that's really going to really be important to us. Who do you see around the NFC that really made a real impact this free agents see signing point?
And I don't have the list in front of me, but I'm kind of watching on what a couple of the teams in the NFC North have been doing.
Right.
The Bears and the Lions specifically. I know the Packers have brought in some interesting names. The Packers have brought in some interesting names, but I think that division is going to be pretty competitive. So I'll be interested to see what happens with there. As far as our friends out on the left coast, the Los Angeles Rams, they lost some big pieces. We knew that they would. But they've done a better job, at least I think, Kyle, they've done a better job at replenishing some of those mercenary signings from last year than what I thought that they would. So they still have to be considered, if not at the top of the heap of competitors, and certainly close to it. I think even the Philadelphia Eagles, they made some nice moves. They just made a trade for Jordan Howard, the running back from Chicago, to fill a big hole for them. So they're still going to be a very talented team to watch out of the NFC East. And then your favorite whipping boys down in Dallas, too. They still have a pretty talented roster, too. This NFC is every bit as loaded as what it was at last year at this time when we started talking about it.
Right. Quick question. Russell Wilson told the Seattle Seahawks that he is giving them until April 15th to offer him a contract. We hear some rumblings from Jerry's world that Dak Prescott as well is asking for a new deal. What are your thoughts on Russell Wilson? Because, Russell Wilson has had, and I did not know this, since, was it 2016, a better passing to interception ratio than any other quarterback in the league.
I know he doesn't turn the ball over. I didn't realize his interception rate was that low, which is even more impressive. Look, I love Russell Wilson, the quarterback. I think he is a true playmaker. He is one of only a few of the quarterbacks currently in the NFL that I think could have excelled in any era of football. And I'm old, so you can take that for take that for whatever you're worth. I'm kind of a get off of my lawn kind of guy. The rules were better back when I was watching, everything like that. But I do believe that Wilson could have excelled, just like our Drew Brees is one of only a few quarterbacks currently in the league that could have excelled in any era. He's still a young guy. I think he's maybe 30.
No, he'll become 30. No, what is Russell? He's 28.
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, even better. And I know where you're going with this. 2 years ago, I was still very young.
I take that back. He is 30. He is 30. He is. He just made 30. Okay.
But 2 years ago, I was still very young in the industry. So I wasn't putting out a lot of pieces. I was working for Mr. Barry Hursis, over at the Big Easy Believer, who gave me my shot in this. But I was looking at three things. We've all been looking at Drew Brees' age and contract every year, and we know he's far closer to the end than he is the beginning. Although I would love to see Mr. Brees play another 10, 15, 20 years. I don't think that's realistic. So I was looking then at two names, when I saw Brees' contract at that time before it was kind of reworked. Two names quarterbacks whose contracts were going to expire as it stood then in the year 2020. Matthew Stafford and Russell Wilson. Now, Stafford has since been re-signed, or extended rather, by the Lions to a very lucrative contract, but Wilson is not, which is what you're referring to. And now his camp is saying, given the Seahawks a deadline of, I believe, April 15th, to give him a new offer, because as it stands right now, Russell Wilson is slated to become an unrestricted free agent at the end of this coming season. I believe that if Drew Brees decides to retire. And if he's still at the top of his game, near at the top of his game, and still wants to play, then I don't want to see him go anywhere. I want to make that perfectly clear. But if Drew Brees decides to step away at the end of this season, I know that the Saints kind of have a blueprint in place for Teddy Bridgewater to potentially take over. I think if a Russell Wilson becomes available, you rip up that blueprint and you go full bore after him. I know it's going to cost a lot of money to get a player like that, but you're already paying a lot of money in Drew Brees. So this organization recognizes what it needs to do to have an elite franchise quarterback in place. They have all the other pieces there already. So I think that Sean Payton would probably sign off on that plan too. Russell Wilson is available. Well, what do we need to do to go get him?
Man, that is a interesting way of putting it. I never thought about Russell Wilson in the black and gold, to be honest, man. But man, it would sure look good to have Sierra here, man, with those long legs. But no, I'm sorry. But when it comes to Russell Wilson, having him to be able to play, and I think plays probably several pretty decent years under Sean Payton would really be interesting. Look, nothing's set in stone. Teddy Bridgewater only has a 1-year deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
You still have to compete for the slot. Remember when Russell was drafted by those guys, Matt Flynn was their heir apparent with the big deal that he signed from his breakout games spelling Rodgers that time when he was hurt right at the end of the year and in the playoffs when he had those record-breaking games. Then he could not perform through the camp, So you just don't know what's going to happen. And I'm going to say this. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe people later, you can always throw this back in my face. But I look at a guy like Nick Foles, and he's going to the Jaguars, and look, man, I'm all for people getting paid. So I just don't think that's going to be a success. I'm just saying. I don't think it's going to be a success. Again, I could be wrong, but remember, the Eagles gave up on him, sent him out to the Rams, and the Rams gave up on him. He went back. Mm-hmm. I think he's a better guy as a closer, reliever type of guy. That's you saw it early in the preseason in that first game or two that the Eagles had at the beginning of the season. He didn't do too hot, man, So all I'm saying is this, man. You got guys who perform at certain times of the season that's good for them. You need a guy that's going to be consistent all the way through a season. And you have a guy like Wilson who, look at it, he's healthy. He's not injury prone, right? Even though he scrambles around. But you make a very good point. If the Seattle Seahawks organization, which is a little bit up in turmoil since Allen's passing, because the family still hasn't been able to come up with a solid plan of who's going to run that organization. If they're not able to come up with a solid plan for Wilson, I think after April 15th, Wilson may be asking to leave the organization at the end of the season. So that might be a good plan there to be able to see if the Saints would be interested in his services. All right, Bob.
Yeah.
That's some good stuff, buddy. Tell everybody how they can be able to follow your writings on the internet.
Well, I can be my individual accounts are both on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook, it's under Bob Rose. Twitter is at BobbyR2613. My writings are through the Canal Street Chronicles on Facebook, Canal Street Chronicles, and Twitter at Saint CFC. Lately I have been we're starting to, it's that time of year, folks. It's mock draft time. I put out my first mock draft in the beginning of the week. It's player profile time. I put out, I think, three of them so far. Excuse me. I have Irv Smith coming out tomorrow morning. Some of our other outstanding writers and terrific editor, John Hendricks, they're putting out pieces too. We cover the draft pretty extensively, I think, have in years past, and certainly plan to do so this year. So please, get in touch with us. It's obviously free to join if you sign up for Canal Street Chronicles on Facebook and get our updates and notifications there. And as we say every week, we also have a Bayou Blitz Facebook page. I think we're standing at about 13 or 1,400 members. I'm seeing a lot more activity again, from different members in that group, which I'm absolutely thrilled to see. We're still running that contest. Nobody's posting their video or audio clips about the Saints off season so far, to see if you can become a co-host of with Kyle and myself for an episode. So please get moving on that. I know you're active. I know you like what we do. And you're pretty interactive with both Kyle and I individually. Become a bigger part of the show. We want you to do this. But if you have a friend or a family member who you think will like what we do as well, kind of shoo them over our direction. Have them send us a membership request for the Bayou Blitz Facebook page. Obviously, it's free as well. We want you as part of our family. We want your input. We want your thoughts. We really do. We value and treasure them, and love what you guys have done with us and for us so far.
Yep, definitely. Saints fans, you can always be able to follow the Saints News Network at saintsnewsnetwork.com. And Barry Hurstis puts out a couple articles every hour. So you can be able to follow Barry and his content there, as well as you can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and as well as on Twitter at Saints News. Guys, pray for the families. You heard about the tragic death of the rapper Nipsey Hussle. Pray for his family, because he was a positive young man in his latter part of his life. And I know everybody say, well, not always, but yeah, in the latter part of his life he was. But also I would like to say to you guys, just be in prayer for our country, be in prayer for our city, and be in prayer for one another, because we've got to be able to lift up each other and be able to put a positive spin on this thing we call life here on Earth. All right, guys, this is Kyle T. Mosley of Saints News Network with Mr. Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz and Canal Street Chronicles. Bob, you guys have a great rest of your week. Saints fans and Who Dat Nation, we will see you guys later, and you guys be safe. We're out of here. Take care. Bye.
Take care.